Wilfred whistled. The mountain railway had just welcomed 3 new engines. While Lord Harry was proving to be a handful, Alaric and Eric had settled in nicely. They were quiet engines, but were well-mannered and hard-working. Ernest and Wilfred were glad of the help. The new engines helped take the strain off their couplings while Colby was away. Not long after his arrival, the other engines noticed Alaric would tense up when it was his turn to go out. His smile disappeared, and he was short with his coach and crew.
I can't understand it,
Eric confided to Ernest.
He was always so chipper in the workshop. Didn't have a bad thing to say the whole way here.
Ernest pondered.
Well, perhaps he's still getting used to his surroundings. It can take time for your new home to truly feel as such.
Eric had to agree, but still felt there was something Alaric wasn't letting on to. One day, Alaric sat at the first station, waiting for clearance to head up the mountain. He wasn't steaming well, and his crew were doing all they could to strengthen his fire. He glanced nervously at the passengers mulling about the platform.
Must be brave,
he told himself. At that moment, he heard whistling, but not of the steam variety. Wilfred arrived with the truck and backed into the loop to let Alaric pass. He had a habit of whistling as he went about his work, so much so that Ernest had dubbed him the musical engine.
Must you do that? Grunted Alaric.
What's the harm in a little whistling, youngster?
Smiled Wilfred. You've got a perfectly good whistle fixed to your dome. Use that if you must.
Scolded Wilfred. That whistle is for signalmen and emergencies only. This is just my musical rhythm whistle. A little tune while you work isn't so bad.
It's childish, snapped Alaric. I'd have thought an old engine like you would be past that nonsense. He gave a sharp blast of his own whistle and snorted off. Wilfred took no notice. He went to shunt the truck away, whistling all the while. Alaric did not have an easy journey. Rain began to fall as he puffed through Skarloey Road, and by the time he reached Devil's Back, a fierce gale began to blow. The train had to wait out the weather before forging on to the summit, and the passengers grew impatient and cross. Alaric heard none of their complaints. He stared silently at the last stretch of line, with the winds howling and thunder cracking. "It's only weather, nothing to fear," he muttered nervously. We'll be all right. At last, there was a break in the weather. With skies clear, Alaric forged ahead. He glanced nervously down either side of the mountain and gulped. In his distraction, he'd slowed down considerably.
"Come on, boy," urged his driver. "What's the hold-up? You've plenty of steam left."
"Plenty of steam," he stammered. "Nothing to it." But he only went as fast as he dared. The passengers were not happy when they reached the station. "We won't have nearly enough time to take in the summit." The station master assured them he would find a solution, and the crew examined Alaric as he sat at the platform.
"Well, nothing out of sorts," said the fireman, scratching his head. "You're sure you're all right, boy?"
Of course," Alaric replied, trying to smile bravely. Couldn't be better." The crew shrugged to each other and headed for the cafe. Gradient posts are an important part of the mountain railway. Without these in place, drivers wouldn't know if the line was going to get steeper, and wouldn't be able to give their engine enough power to make the climb. The gradient post at Skarloey Road had stood firmly in place since the railway's opening, but the strong winds from the storm had other ideas for it. Alaric was making his way down the mountain, but was not keeping a good lookout. He hated rolling backwards and had his eyes shut tight. "Soon be over," he whispered to himself. The station came into view. Then, "Yikes!" shouted the driver. There was the gradient post, strewn across the tracks. He screwed the brakes on, but Alaric wasn't paying attention and couldn't stop in time. He hit the post and with a bump, came off the line. Alaric sat crooked across the line. He felt very sorry for himself. I'm sorry," he stammered to his crew. The driver shook his head. "Well, better to come off here than at the viaduct. Oh, I shudder to think what the outcome of that might have been." Alaric was glad that hadn't been the case. Thankfully, the Skarloey Road station could be reached by road, and a bus was called to take the passengers home. Alaric sat sad and cold, waiting for someone to come rescue him. He knew at once who had been sent. Echoing around the mountain and getting closer was a cheerful whistle. Wilfred pulled into the loop, pushing the truck. The men set to work getting Alaric back on the rails.
"Penny for your thoughts?"
asked Wilfred. Well, began Alaric. No, I can't say. It's silly," he finished, gazing back up the mountain.
"If I didn't know better, and I think I do," chuckled Wilfred, "I'd say you're frightened of something. Something of mountainous proportions." And he winked.
"It sounds ridiculous," sighed Alaric. "An engine afraid of heights when that's exactly what he was designed for."
"You act like you're the only one it's ever happened to."
"You mean you?"
"Certainly," continued Wilfred. "It's a daunting task, even if you're not afraid. But fear can be overcome, youngster. There are ways to keep yourself calm."
He winked again. Alaric's eyes widened. "So that's why you whistle!"
Wilfred smiled. "When I was being built, the men in the workshops whistled all day long. I remember my first trip up the mountain. I was terrified. I thought if I had a small distraction, it would be easier. I whistled the tunes I remembered from the old days, and it nipped the problem right in the bud. I've not been scared for years, but the songs still put me in mind of my younger days. Perhaps it might be worth a try."
Soon, Alaric had been re-railed, and Wilfred took the workmen home. As he began to roll back, Alaric felt himself tense up. He remembered Wilfred's words, and began whistling a small melody. He relaxed at once, and made it back to the sheds quicker than ever before. Over the next few days, the others noticed an immediate change in Alaric's temperament. He was cheerful to everyone he met, and whistled all day long. The engines were quite amused with his sudden change of heart regarding whistling. Even Culdy, who learned of the story upon his return, found it funny.
"Keep it up, Wilfred," he chuckled, "and soon we'll have our own mountain engine choir."
Alaric and Wilfred could only laugh in agreement.